Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome. I don't know if y'all got the first hello and welcome or not, so forgive me if I doubled the hello and welcome. My name is Corrina and I am a holistic health coach, and this is my live Q&A session. So your chance to ask your questions. There's a couple questions that were already left on my Instagram, so I'm going to start with those. And if you have questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat. So, one of the questions that was left on Instagram, I'm going to go back and pull it up just so I can make sure I get exactly right. So this is from Rouse Music. Thank you so much for leaving a question. Is it possible to regain lost flexibility? So this is a great question. I am um, really concerned with not just the physical aspects of flexibility, so the actual ability of the muscle to stretch or not, but also the nervous system components that also have a very important role in our, I would even say, perception of flexibility. And what I mean by that is that when we are going to do certain stretches or do certain movements, trying to get this cord out of the way, that's so unsightly. Y'all are fine. Anyway, um, when we're going to do these different maybe stretches or certain activities that we use to, I guess, gauge how flexible we are, right? One of the things that really is going to impact how flexible we seem or how flexible we perceive ourselves to be is actually coming from the nervous system. And these messages that have to come from the nervous system that tell the muscle that it's safe to stretch. So, a lot of times when we are doing different physical activities or physical, whether it's stretches or something more strength based, a lot of times the muscles are being broken, they're being torn. So, in the sense that the muscles themselves actually want to protect themselves from being harmed, a lot of times they will become more tense and more tight just in a response to potential trauma. So that would be, I would consider something like, excessive weight training, right? It's kind of traumatizing to the muscle. But also, if the muscle is not perceiving a safe level of stretching, then it's also going to tense up and you're going to perceive that you've lost your flexibility. So, this is why it's really, really important when we're working on our flexibility and we're working on stretches to really use our breath to help interact and engage with our nervous system and send these different messages of safety, these signals that it's okay for the muscles to stretch and to let go, and that you're not going to actually put them into a state of trauma by overstretching them or overworking them. So, this is similar, a similar recommendation would be like, this is why you don't want to do too much excessive weight. Because then the muscles, in an effort to protect themselves from the trauma of lifting too much or whatever it might be that you're doing, the effort to try and protect themselves from that trauma is actually for them to tense and tighten. And then you perceive yourself as, oh, I'm too weak for this, or I'm not flexible enough for this, where actually the problem is just that your nervous system is not getting messages of safety and the muscles are tensing up. So, one of the ways to use your breath to signal safety to the nervous system is by simply bringing your mindfulness to your breath. And what that means is you just pay attention to your breath. So, the first thing you want to notice is if your breathing is really shallow. And when I say shallow, I mean your breath is not filling up your full lung capacity. So I'll pull back a little bit. Your lung capacity goes almost all the way down to your belly button, right? And if you think about where the diaphragm is, you can kind of get a visual image of actually how big your lungs are. So when we're in a state of stress, like we're sitting in traffic or whatever we might be doing, right? If we're in a state of stress, we're usually breathing very shallowly. So that means we're kind of breathing like this. So now the breath is just filling up maybe like the very top of the lungs. We're not actually breathing all the way down to our lung capacity. So if you want to breathe down into your lungs, I think it's nice if you place your hand over your belly. So you're going to feel your organs pushing out underneath your hand as you take a breath. So you're not actually breathing into your literal belly, but you're breathing so deeply into your lung capacity that your lungs push your organs out, and you will kind of feel your belly move outward during that breath. So that would look something like this. It doesn't really look like much, but let me compare it to the other one again. So basically, the difference is that a deep breath, your chest is not going to, raise up a lot, right? And you'll feel your belly expand more if you're, say, like laying down on your back and you really feel your belly lift. So it's a very subtle thing, but the whole idea is to just notice your breath and think about trying to breathe into your full lung capacity, trying not to raise up the chest too much. So you're really thinking about filling up the lungs with breath. And it does take some mindfulness to do that. And the more that you kind of work on it, the easier it will get. Right? So, another mindful technique on your breath that can be helpful. This is all about sending signals of safety to your nervous system. So, these ideas of breath, even though that I'm answering this question right now about getting more flexible and sending messages of safety to our muscles when we're stretching them, this information about breathing also applies to if we're feeling anxious, we're feeling stressed, if we can't sleep. So, mindfulness to the breath. Another way to bring mindfulness to your breath and signal to the nervous system a safe environment for relaxation is by 4-part breathing. So, this is just where you give your attention to all 4 parts of the breath. So, I actually brought a little dry erase board so I can even give you guys, because I like having little like visuals. So a lot of times we'll hear this referred to as box breathing. And in the military, they use this box breathing technique. But in yoga, you will often just hear it referred to as 4-part breath. And essentially, what you're doing is you've got inhale and exhale. So when we're just normally breathing, right? Especially if we're really stressed out, right? And sometimes we have really like kind of forced panty exhales, as in we are panting in that exhale. It's kind of exasperated. So our regular breath, when we're not thinking about it, we got inhale and exhale. This should not come as a surprise to anyone. And then when we have a 4-part breath, or just trying to be mindful of our breath, we notice those little spaces in between the breaths. Hi, Chris. So good to see you. Glad you're here. I feel like a broken record sometimes talking about this, so I'm glad that you think it's a good reminder. um, so these little spaces between the breaths, right? These little pauses. And I'm just going to write pause and pause. So, as you start noticing the 4 parts of the breath, I encourage you to begin with a very, very short little pause in between because it's a bit of a challenge. It's a bit of a challenge. So, start with just a little tiny pause in between the inhale and exhale. And then over time, if that starts to feel easy, you can extend that little duration between inhale and exhale. And the box breathing technique that they teach to people in the military to help them fall asleep is where each part of the breath is the same number of counts. So 4 would be a good example. 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds. I have been practicing this type of 4-part breathing for years now, and I still find box breath to be quite a challenge. So just know that going into it, that it's not easy to do this. It it takes a bit of time. So start with small pauses, short pauses, and don't stress yourself out if you can't keep with the counts. And just know that the whole goal of this breathing is that at some point you will feel, a bit exasperated or tired of doing this, and then you will go back into your normal breathing. But now it will be much more calm and just deep, restful breathing. And oftentimes, doing this little breath counting is the last thing that I remember before I fall asleep. So I do think that it's very effective. It's also just a mental way of signaling to your nervous system that it's time to relax. Because if you were in a state of stress, let's say there's a lion nearby, let's say there's a tiger running toward you, there's no way in heck you're ever going to be doing a breathing technique like this. So when you start doing mindful breath work, it helps just signal to your nervous system that, like, hey, this is why it's a signal of safety. Because if you weren't in a safe environment, you would never be doing these controlled breathing counts. So another one that's really helpful. So we talked about like 4, 4, 4, 4, but let's talk about like 4, 2, and 7. So inhale 4 seconds, pause for just 2, and then super slow controlled exhale. And just know that if once you do this super slow controlled exhale, this may be a little bit difficult. So if you don't get the exhale and the pause, that's okay, right? But the whole idea is that a slow and controlled exhale is another one of those things that will send a message to your brain. Um, Letting the nervous system know that, hey, we're in a safe place right now. And this type of meditative breathing um, just helps calm the body in so many different ways. So, hello, Chris. Glad you're here. Elle Smith, good to see you. Learning about breath work is so important. I practice it every day. It is invaluable. I like the alternate nostril breathing technique as well. So, Nadi Shodhana. Oftentimes it's done with a pinky and the thumb. But essentially, the idea is that you close one nostril and inhale through one. Don't want to make silly noises at you guys. And then you close the other nostril and you switch. And so you do this alternate nostril breathing. And there's actually a lot of people on this here interwebs here that we're on right now that have done really great teachings of Nadi Shodhana. So rather than teaching it in the chat right now, because it is something that I just feel like it would be a strange thing to actually lead people through live in the chat. But if it's something you want to learn, there are a lot of wonderful teachers who have taught that breathing technique over the years. Okay, and then there was another question on here. Alex Serum, not sure if I'm saying your Instagram name right, but anyways, any tips to help me stick to a routine? What a good question. I think the first thing is that we forgive ourselves. We practice gratitude and forgiveness with ourselves for feeling like we fall off of our routine. I think the biggest detriment of quote unquote falling off the routine is the mental gymnastics that we do to ourselves, feeling bad, feeling guilt, feeling maybe shame that, oh, I splurged and I did this, or I splurged and I did that. Let go of that guilt, let go of that shame, and forgive yourself. And I assure you that as you start noticing those little pesky thoughts that are like, oh, why didn't you do this? Oh, why didn't you do that? Notice them and just say, you know what? I forgive you. I forgive myself. I forgive myself for having the cupcake. I forgive myself for skipping the workout. Whatever the thing is, forgive yourself. Because one of the sneakiest things that our inner critic does to stop us from doing any new thing. So basically, the inner critic, it's, I, I'm a dork anyway, but I envision that the ego and the inner critic are in cahoots. Okay, so your ego is always trying to protect itself. It doesn't want to perceive that, it has been tarnished somehow. So your ego would rather you continue doing all of the things you're doing than ever do anything differently. This is why when we talk about like we're creatures of habit, one of the big reasons is that the ego is always trying to protect itself. So even your ego is trying to stop you from getting healthy. It's trying to stop you from doing the things you want to do. It's trying to stop you from pursuing the life that you're working toward or whatever goal you might be working toward. Because in your ego's mind, it's actually safer for you to just stay on the couch. Don't start a yoga routine. Don't practice meditating. Don't start journaling. Certainly don't start buying healthier foods at the store. Your ego would prefer that you don't do any of it because it's so scared of potentially being damaged when it perceives that you've failed. So then your inner critic comes in, and your inner critic is trying to protect your ego. And so it's constantly telling you, you're not strong enough. You're not this enough. You never finish what you start. We hear this constant chatter in our minds that is, in a weird way, our ego trying to protect itself, but actually it's totally throwing its own self under the bus. So I think that's the first thing when we think about this idea of sticking to a routine or sticking to a diet, or sometimes we hear this term falling off the wagon, is to just know that that feeling of you feeling guilty and being hard on yourself because you had a cupcake or whatever is actually your inner critic in there, the same inner critic that's trying to stop you from learning how to sew. If you've always wanted to learn how to sew, it's stopping you from ever taking a dance class even though you've kind of always wanted to be a dancer. That inner critic is just always feeding you lies. So listen for that voice and notice what it's saying and ask yourself, wait, is that even true? So let's take a thought like, I'm not strong enough for this. And I have that thought all the time. Okay. When I'm doing yoga, I'm constantly like, I can't do this. I'm not coordinated enough. I'm not strong enough. And I hear that voice and I know that is a lie. That is a lie that my inner critic is telling itself just to protect me, just because it knows if I go lay back on the couch and watch TV, that at least I'm not in danger of being bad at something. So when you treat yourself with this attitude of gratitude, nurture your body, right? Rather than seeing exercise as a punishment, right? Now it's difficult to see exercise as not a punishment. I get that. I totally get that. I know that's a silly record. Don't see exercise as a punishment. See it as a gift you give yourself. It sounds silly, but if you can find fun things to do to help you get your physical activity in, that's the number one way to keep from falling off your routine. So I think one of the this like another challenge that we kind of create for ourselves is we're like, okay, I'm going to go start yoga or I'm going to go start whatever. And we're not really like looking forward to it. So I guess one recommendation is pick things that are fun for you to do. Pick things that you actually would be excited to go and do. And if you need help thinking of those things, then like we can talk about that. That's one of the things I do in my health coaching is helping like get creative with, because there's very few activities that are completely sedentary. right? But there's tons of things you can do that are super active. Go walk around the mall, go walk around a park, find a hiking buddy. If you've always kind of been into playing sports, finding some kind of, intramural team or something in your town where you can just go and play and just have fun, but like be doing something athletic. That's certainly way better than like going and spending an hour on a treadmill inside of a big building filled with people that make you feel bad about yourself. So it's like, I think one of the hardest things is that we, in our minds, tell ourselves, oh, I'm going to just make myself do all these things I don't really want to do. But I encourage you to get creative and try instead to find things that you actually want to do and, um, give yourself those things to do rather than trying to, because we can easily say, oh, in the future, I'm going to make myself go do XYZ. But you're going to be a lot more likely to stay on your routine or whatever if you can find some fun things that you look forward to doing. And I believe that if you are having fun while you're working out, that is actually even more health beneficial for you than if you're miserable while working out. I don't know if there's any science behind that, but I'm going to go out on a limb. What are the benefits of holistic health coaching versus regular health coaching? Sorry if you've already answered. Also, nutritional bars, even the healthy ones, have so much sugar. What's considered too much? Dang. Elle Smith dropped the mic on like really good questions there. Okay, I'm going to think about this for a second. I feel like I kind of skipped off of that. There was one other thing I wanted to say about sticking to a routine. Okay, finding things you want to do, being kind to yourself, forgiving yourself, letting go of guilt, right? Because life happens. And I promise you that there is no athlete or person out there who doesn't sometimes have days where they skip their workout or they do whatever, or they go to a birthday party and they have a bunch of cake, or, living your life and being human um, is and accepting yourself for being human. I think is really the most important. Sometimes we have really unrealistic goals or unrealistic ideas of what like we expect other people to do or what we expect ourselves to do. Um, and then I'm a big fan myself of like rather than having a strict routine. Now I know that there are a lot of people who have a very like a strict routine, and that is what is actually really helpful for them. Myself personally, I'm kind of more of a like grab bag, for lack of a better term. And what I mean by that is that I kind of have this concept of a handful of different healthy things I would like to do each day or goals that I have each day. But I am very forgiving with myself that I'm probably not going to do all of them every single day. Drinking water, having a big glass of green juice. I need to do that right now. I've been putting it off I'll be honest, I've been putting it off for a couple days. I've been like, oh, I don't wanna, but I know I should go. I should go drink the green juice that I bought. I already bought it, so I should drink it. Physical activity, and then that's another thing as well is that if people are like, okay, every single day I'm going to do, 30 minutes of cardio, 30 minutes of yoga, XYZ of this, XYZ of that, you're creating a very unrealistic expectation for yourself, which is that some days your body just has different levels of energy. Some days, especially depending on the kind of workouts you're doing, if you are doing workouts, some days your body just needs to heal and recover. So maybe the other thing I wanted to say here was listen to your body and let your needs as a human being and a person and an emotional being living in a really stressful world, okay? Let yourself be more important than your routine. And let your listening to your body and trying to ask, what does my body need right now? What do I need right now? Maybe I need to take a rest today. Maybe I need to skip the cardio today or skip the weight training today or just go take the dogs for a walk instead of going and, do it whatever other activity you were going to do. Listen to what your needs are and make that more important than trying to stick to some routine that you've created. Um, it's kind of a silly thing as a yoga teacher, right? It's all about balance. So we have to find the balance between, trying to stick to a routine and the benefits of, having something we stick to and having something that we um, are trying to maintain over a period of time. But then also just being really realistic and really nurturing of ourselves, listening to our bodies, listening to what we need, and finding that balance between the routine and the human being hood, the human beinghood that we have. I wish there was an easier way for me to like see all of the questions in one place. Okay. What are your tips if one deals with constant nightmares? Liquid philosophy. Um, so first of all, I already reached out and messaged him and sent him this article that I found. But essentially it was talking about like the difference between nightmares and night tremors and bad dreams. And um, it was sleepfoundation.org is the website. And it was very interesting. And I learned things that I didn't know. But what I want to say here is that I think we really, um, want to consider um, how our emotions are doing. And what I mean is, if there is this feeling that you are, um, you have a lot of fear about something, or maybe a lot of apprehension or worry, or maybe there's just kind of this unprocessed emotion, something that's happened that we just haven't really felt our way through, which is usually crying our way through. That a lot of times that will kind of come up and, show up in our dreams. And I certainly know that I have personally noticed like a crazy dream that I've had. And then once I wake up and I'm kind of thinking about it, I can even kind of imagine maybe what I'm worried about or what my fear is that caused that. And a lot of times it is some kind of fearful emotion that I think is kind of our brain's way of handling it. Our dreams are also kind of where our brain is shifting through all the information it took in, shifting through, all the thoughts about the future that are just constantly kind of running through our head, right? Um, so my recommendation would be to have some kind of a little journal next to your bed. And because I know that people don't always know what journals are, I have one here. Just kidding. Um, I just had this in case I wanted to draw anything. But have a little something, and I like having a little book. It just feels less daunting to me than like a regular size notebook. But obviously, any size notebook or even just scrap paper. Or if you're somebody who, is in a workplace where you have tons of printer paper, I know that I used to always like take home printer paper that was like used, but blank on one side. And then the stuff that's blank on one side could, basically be reused for whatever. Anyways, point being, doesn't matter what you write on. But I think there's benefit to getting our thoughts and our emotions down on a page, and especially right before we go to sleep. Um, so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Um, Nightmares, they said the qualifying factor basically is that you wake up. The nightmare wakes you up. So if you're just having really bad dreams, then that might not actually qualify as nightmares. But it certainly is not pleasant to experience either way. And so the best recommendation that I can think of is um, journaling, writing, just like stream of consciousness, kind of writing through your thoughts, your emotions, your fears, or maybe even just the things that happened that day. Because a lot of what's happening in our dreams is just our brain going through all the things that happened that day. So maybe it could help to kind of get some of it on paper and like out of the brain before we sleep. All right. Hi, Jules. Glad you're here. Glad you're here. So, Elle Smith, I'm going to come back to your question. So, in general, I'm not super sure, specific differences between a regular health coach and a holistic health coach. I would assume there's a lot of, kind of crossover in what type of services that we provide and the types of things that we talk about. But in general, as a, concept, holistic health is really about treating the body as a whole and recognizing that all of the different parts are more than just a sum of the parts. They're actually like synergistically involved. They impact one another, they affect one another. And, so an example would be somebody comes in, maybe it's, anxiety, which is really common. I don't, there's not very many people these days who aren't suffering with anxiety. So, as a holistic health coach, one of the things you might talk about is the role of blood sugar in anxiety, and how if you're on a blood sugar roller coaster all the time, eating sugary foods, eating sodas, refined carbohydrates, which is any kind of white bread, unfortunately, super unfortunately, um, those blood sugar spikes, one of the, kind of side effects of that is that it's a very stressful situation for the body. And your blood sugar level or blood glucose level is a life or death factor for your body. So that's why high blood sugar is going to put your body into a state of panic. Low blood sugar does the same thing. We call it being hangry, right? Because when the blood sugar starts going low, the body's literally panicking. And I would just encourage you to think of like, oh, when we're hangry, like a similar thing is happening to our bodies when we have a blood sugar spike. Even though we don't necessarily get mad, right? We don't get angry as much, right? As we do like when we're hungry. Um, there's definitely a stressful effect on the body. So that would be something that as a holistic health coach, I would consider. And I would at least want to talk to them about like what their sugar intake is like. Um, Maybe if they're like, oh, yeah, I'm constantly eating candy bars and drinking sodas, then I might have them even like keep a little journal or keep little notes, or people can keep it, typed up in their phone if that's preferable, where they start like noticing if their attacks are in any way linked to sugar consumption. Like, oh, yeah, it turns out that about 45 minutes after I have my candy bar and my soda, my anxiety gets really, really bad. That would just be an example that like, okay, well, now we've shown this correlation between the things. Um, so I would think, maybe a regular health coach does that too, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. My program I did was holistic health coaching, and we looked at tons of different diets and different ways of eating and different health conditions that can be helped by different ways of eating. So that's just kind of my wheelhouse, so to speak. I'm not exactly sure um, how regular health coaching might be different. Okay, nutrition bars. Even the healthy ones have so much sugar. What is considered too much? Holy heckaroonies. I personally am less concerned with a maybe I don't want to say less concerned, but I'm at least equally concerned with the source of the sugar in the product, the bar, the whatever it is, as I am with the actual grams of sugar in the product. So, what I mean by that is that something that is sweetened with corn syrup, when I turn something over and I see high fructose corn syrup, I don't even go and look at the grams of sugar in the thing. I just immediately put it back. I know that the way the body handles refined sugar So basically, refined just means highly concentrated, right? So they've like taken the amount of sugar that's in a kernel of corn. Okay. And corn is sweet. That's why they use it to make high fructose corn syrup. But if they took the sugar that was in the corn and then like hyper concentrated it down, we get corn syrup. And then they concentrate it down some more, they refine it even more. And now you've got high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup. Anyways, so those sweeteners, the body just does not know what they are, how to handle them. They don't exist in nature, right? There is no way that you could consume the amount of sugar that's in 500 kernels of corn in one bite or in one sip of soda. There's just, you know, you would get so full from all the fiber in the corn, you wouldn't probably would be able to eat that much less in that period of time that you can ingest, the high amounts of refined sugar. So another way of looking at that is that you could have some of these 0-calorie bars, which are also excessively common now. Well, now they have 0 grams of sugar. Seemingly, this would be a very healthy choice, my number one recommendation. But actually, the artificial sweeteners, so acesulfame potassium, sucralose, right? So if you just see sucrose, it's just sugar. But if it's sucralose, it's an artificial sweetener, which is basically the same as aspartame, but they stopped using aspartame because they knew that consumers were becoming aware of how dangerous it was and trying to avoid it. But rather than just getting rid of artificial sweeteners altogether because consumers were concerned about the health effects they were having, both long term and acute or immediate, as in people were calling the FDA to complain about different effects they were getting from aspartame. And it was the most reported food chemical of all. Well, rather than get rid of artificial sweeteners, they just invented two others with more confusing sounding names. So that's your sucralose and your acesulfame potassium. It looks like ACE sulfame, ACESULFAME, acesulfame potassium. And I just constantly mention those because when you look on ingredient labels, you will see them everywhere, even in foods that have sugar. Why do they put them in there? I think it's just because they want people to get used to the flavor of them. But anyways, you'll see them everywhere, and I will just tell you that those things I will put away. I will never buy on purpose. I've probably purchased things in my life that had those things in them and I just didn't notice or I just didn't read the ingredients or whatever. But if I read the ingredients and I see them, I will not buy it. So I would actually rather you have something with 20 or 30 grams of sugar than something with those artificial sweeteners in it. That's just my personal feeling as a holistic health coach. Clearly, there's tons of people out there who disagree and think that those artificial sweeteners are perfectly safe. I think it's really a personal decision that everyone has to make, but that's just my personal decision that I make is to avoid those things. So, your healthy sources of sugar are just going to be natural sources of sugar. So, the examples like maple syrup, honey, sometimes you'll see coconut sugar. It's actually gotten really common. Either in like powdered form, looking just like regular sugar, or sometimes you'll even find it in the little like squeezy tube, like to put in your coffee or whatever. But when you eat something that is a natural source of sweetness. Okay, so honey, maple syrup, dates, another great example. In addition to the actual sugar, the sweetness in that food, you also get a bunch of other nutrients. A lot of these are minerals or micronutrients. But the bottom line is that your body gets a lot of good stuff along with the sugar. And when you're eating foods in their most natural state, usually the food itself contains different enzymes and molecules or nutrients that help you digest the food. So, one of my favorite examples is the egg, the incredible edible egg. A lot of times we'll hear people say, "Oh, no, just eat the egg whites. Just get the protein. Take the fat out of the egg." Not only have you just told people to, "Oh, why don't you take the part of the egg that tastes good and not eat it?" But you've also said, "Oh, let's take the part of the egg that has the most nutrients," right? So even though the yolk is where the fat is also where a lot of the nutrients are. Not only the fats that are nutrients, but the other nutrients in the yolk that help the body digest the protein that's in the white. So when you take the yolk out of the egg, not only have you made something that tastes bad, in my opinion, disgusting, in my opinion, but you've also actually kind of disrupted the body's ability to break down and digest the egg white. So, holistic health coach. Holistic health coach wants you to eat the whole egg, eat the food in its most natural state, eat the form of sugar that is a natural source of sugar rather than some kind of artificially created sugar. These are just kind of, you know, I guess my general philosophy. Um, so I feel like I went off on a crazy bunch of tangents answering that question. Um, I will do a little bit of research on those bars and actually like find an array of different sugar contents on them and maybe even like ingredients and I don't know that'd be a crazy idea. But I can't give you just a number off the top of my head of like how many grams of sugar is too much. Like I said, I'm kind of more of a gonna check the ingredients rather than check the grams of sugar. But here's one of my favorite drinks. You guys, if you ever see this, you gotta try it. It is so good. Magical lemon cupcake kombucha. Now, if you don't like kombucha, you might not think this tastes good, but it's kind of got this. Oh, it's like kind of tangy and sweet. 9 grams of sugar. 9 grams of sugar. So I think a Coke is like, I don't know, 38 grams of sugar in a 12-ounce Coke. I don't even know. 65 in a 20-ounce. Man, I don't have to refresh myself. But, you know, so yeah, so like when I'm drinking something, a beverage, I would say like maybe like 10 grams of sugar, 12, 13 grams of sugar is kind of like my max or whatever. If I start seeing things that are like 20, 28, I feel like that's a lot to drink, right? Because when you drink the sugar, it immediately hits your bloodstream. There's no, actually, this is like a maybe interesting little concept. But so when you drink the sugar, the glucose pretty much immediately spikes up your blood glucose level. So, I try not to have a super, super, super sugary beverage because that's just like straight blood sugar spike central. When you have a sweet food thing, right? Like a nutrition bar or a health bar or whatever thing, the fiber, the fat, and the protein that is contained in the food actually slows down the absorption of glucose into your bloodstream. So, in essence, the fiber, fats, and protein help to slow down and reduce the severity of the blood sugar spike. And I could draw y'all a little doodad thing if y'all want me to. But yeah, so when you're eating a nutrition bar or something like that, I'm a little less worried about the sugar content because there's usually nuts, seeds, maybe there's like peanut butter or oats, or there's some kind of other fiber, fats, and or protein that are contained in this bar that help to make that sugar content a little less jarring on the body. Um, that said, there's still tons of those bars that I will probably end up telling y'all I think have way too much sugar. I'm just going to go through and I'll actually go through some specific bars and kind of evaluate them out for you guys. Any ideas? So this is John Wellen. Thank you so much for your comment. Any ideas for ways to address high blood pressure when weight and sleep apnea are already being addressed? When the doctor takes my blood pressure, usually it is still high. White coat syndrome, maybe. Okay, so white coat syndrome, John, I think what you're saying is like you're so stressed out when you're in the doctor's office, your blood pressure is always going to be high in the doctor's office. Um, so yeah, that is actually, I think, a very real and true, and certainly true for me kind of situation. Um, I just read the Holy Heckaroni back, man. Anyway. So yeah, maybe the first thing I would say is to order yourself a blood sugar cuff thing. Sorry, blood pressure cuff. I'm like blood sugar cuff, dirt. So that you can check your blood pressure at home. That would be at least a way to navigate how much of this white coat syndrome is causing you to have these high levels of blood pressure. Um, Blood pressure is a very interesting issue. One of the things that I think is um, not talked about enough is actually the role that sugar plays when we're talking about problems with blood pressure. And a lot of times when we're talking about blood pressure, people fixate on things like fat and cholesterol, and particularly the dietary fats and cholesterol that we're taking in. And there's kind of this such an overemphasis on the fats that I think a big part of the picture is not being seen. So, number one, that our brain is basically made up of cholesterol. We need dietary fats in order to function, and especially in order to mentally function. So, um, although it is important to consider what types of fats you're eating, okay? So, fried foods doesn't count as a healthy fat, unfortunately. We would all be much happier if it did. So, I'm talking about like avocados, nuts, seeds, using a high quality olive oil on your salads, right? So, in your salad dressing, fish is a good source of healthy fats. So, when we think about sugar, the reason that sugar plays such an important role in blood pressure is that if you imagine, actually, I'm gonna draw for y'all again. All right, so let's imagine a blood vessel. I'm a terrible artist. It's just awful. Is it supposed to be like a blood vessel? And then we're gonna look inside the blood vessel. So it's like cut open. So we hear like, oh, we need to lower our cholesterol. We need to lower our dietary fat. We got to stop eating eggs, right? Well, what sugar does when we eat it, of course, it's a freaking shit show over here. Um, there are these things called AGEs, advanced glycation end products. So glycation is when the body's breaking down sugar. So these little advanced glycation end products are just kind of the chump change that is created in the body every time your body is breaking down sugar. And what these AGEs or advanced glycation end products do inside of your veins is attach onto the edge, and it's like a rough, I've heard it compared as like to sandpaper, that it's rough and it's sticky. And essentially, these advanced glycation end products make your blood vessels smaller and stickier. So you have this little cholesterol cell that's just trying to move through your blood as it has to. We need cholesterol. It provides a lot of important functions in the body. right? We have the HDL and LDL, and some of it transports. And like, I mean, it's very, very important role in the body. So limiting our dietary cholesterol, um, it can have a lot of negative impacts, and it doesn't actually resolve the one of the causes, right? It's a complex issue, but this is something that I never hear people talk about. So, um, so anyhow, so you have the cholesterol coming through, and now it's more likely to get caught on the sides because the sides are like, I don't know, what do you want to imagine it like? Toxic sludge, toxic sticky. Um, so in order to keep the blood vessels healthy, so that cholesterol and blood and other things can move through the blood vessels as they're supposed to. Um, this is another reason we really want to look at our sugar intake. And not only the volume of sugar, but how many hours throughout the day that we're having a high level of blood sugar or blood glucose. Because every time you've got sugar in your bloodstream, these little advanced glycation end products are being created. And once you have too many of them, they are, gonna start they kinda start sticking onto the edge of the blood vessel, and then they start sticking to each other, and it's just kind of a, add insult to injury type of thing. So, I actually have another person that I'm working on a video right now, about blood pressure and tips for high blood pressure. Um, So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question, but hopefully that was helpful. And I just wish you the best. And if you do eat a lot of sugar, I encourage you to kind of try laying off of that a little bit. This is probably not going to be like an immediate thing you notice, but certainly something that I think makes a big, contribution to the problem. And sugar in general is just terrible for us. So there's like all kinds of benefits we're going to get if we start to just try to watch our sugar intake and reduce how much sugar we're consuming. Mel B, glad you're here. You've got a loud old airplane going over right now, but I don't know if y'all can actually hear it or if I'm just like hearing it IRL, as they say. Chris Alvino, what are some of your favorite tips for fat loss? I like this question because I know my first answer. Get more sleep. My favorite tip for fat loss. Your body burns fat while you sleep. Your body burns fat while you sleep. Your body heals, recovers, repairs muscles, all while you sleep. So, one of the best ways to help your body burn more fat is actually to get better sleep, to reduce your stress levels. Um, so many of us, we get on this kind of weight loss mindset, and we're thinking like, okay, I need to be going 100 miles a minute. I'm going to get up early so I can go to the gym. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Well, suddenly we've created so much stress, not only internally in our mind from stressing ourselves out about trying to lose weight or all the things that we want to do or think we need to do, um, but that stress in and of itself also disables your body from burning fat. Remember how when we were talking about the box breathing a minute ago when I had the box on here? Anyway, one of the considerations was that when we are in fight or flight mode and the brain is perceiving lions, tigers, and or bears, okay, if the brain is perceiving danger, and just remember that our subconscious doesn't really understand the world that we're in. Like, we know I'm trying to skip a meal. I'm doing OMAD, right? One meal a day. I'm doing OMAD, so I'm not going to eat. Well, your body doesn't necessarily know that. So your body might perceive that as you're in starvation mode because there's not enough food around here. So, one of the things that often happens when people start limiting their calories, starving themselves, not eating enough, skipping meals, is that the body starts to perceive danger, danger, danger. And it's like, I'm going to hold on to all these excess calories for dear freaking life. Because it doesn't necessarily realize that you're choosing not to eat. And it perceives this lack of food as a potential danger, a potential threat. So somebody asked me about fasting recently, and my answer was that like, until you have a very stable, healthy diet, you're eating well, your blood sugar is stable, you're avoiding junk foods. That is really the only time that your body's gonna, I think, get the full benefits of fasting. And there are health benefits of fasting. It's not that there aren't. But it's just that so many of us are in such a chronic state of stress, and especially when it comes to not only like the stress of our lives, but then the stress of being on a diet, and then we start depriving ourselves. We're just putting our bodies into um, such a state of trauma that now the body's just going to kind of panic. And maybe you lose weight while you're fasting, but then you put it right back on as soon as you start eating again because the body's like, oh my God, thank goodness. I thought I was going to die. Another analogy might be when we are giving the body messages of safety, messages of nourishment and nurturing. This starts to let the body know that it's in a safe enough environment that it can focus on the less survival oriented activities, right? So when we're in fight or flight, we're stressed out. The body's only going to do the things that are most concerned with survival. And one of those things, guess what? It's not burning fat. Fat metabolism is not something your body is worried about if it's perceiving lions and tigers and bears. So, in order for your body to go into the mode where it can burn fat, where it can do ketosis and actually burn the ketones or the stored fat molecules, is when you're in a state of calm and when the body is perceiving safety. So, not only do you need to sleep physically more, get more physical hours of sleep, or minimally don't skimp on your sleep, just get enough sleep. But you also just want to be doing things that are keeping your stress levels low, avoiding sending yourself into a high state of fight or flight. And I know that like we have stressful jobs, we have stressful lives. How am I going to not go into a state of fight or flight every day, Corrina? Like, what are you freaking saying? I get it. And I'm there with you. But this is why we practice having things like mindful breathing or box breathing, the 4-part breath, things that we do to help signal to our nervous system that it's okay to relax back down. So if you got really stressed out in traffic or you got really stressed out in a meeting at work, you're not going to just spend the whole rest of your day feeling stressed out. You're going to actively try to do something to help your body come out of that state of stress. So getting more sleep and reducing your stress levels, that is my favorite advice for fat loss. um, an egg without a yolk is an abomination. 100% agree, Chris. 100% agree. Um, okay, Jules, can you share what you eat in a typical day of meals with examples? Um, so yeah, I mean, first of all, my what I eat in a day is always different. I am not a type of person who is like every single morning I eat the same meal. It's just not my type of thing. So a lot of days, um, I probably just eat like 2 meals, um, like 2 larger meals because all of my cooking that I do, I pretty much cook all at home. I hardly ever eat out. Um, so because cooking is kind of, it's kind of a process, kind of time involved. Um, I've just kind of found it easier to do like 2 big meals a day rather than 3 smaller ones. Um, but even that, I would say, is not consistent. Like, there's plenty of days that I eat 3 meals, and I just really am at a point where I just like, I really try to listen to my body and my hunger and pay attention, and sometimes I have to keep track of, like, what time I ate, because then I won't get hungry in time, but I'll know, like, it's been 6 or 7 hours, I have to eat something. So, um, let's see. Probably my, like, most common thing that I make, um, is either, like, chicken or pork chops or whatever, some kind of a usually have some kind of, like, a meat thing. Oftentimes, I'll just bake it in the oven, with some, like, spices and avocado oil, and have some kind of a veggie bake, and I'll throw that in the oven with it. So, broccolis are probably my most common vegetable that I eat. But I'm also a big fan of zucchinis because they're easy and they don't really taste like anything. It's easy to lose them in whatever. So anytime I'm making spaghetti and meat sauce, I'm always just trying to throw tons of vegetables in that sauce. Zucchinis, onions, mushrooms, bell peppers, maybe. If you like spicy food, we talked about this in the last chat, I think, but spicy peppers are healthy for you. So if you like spice in your food, know that getting some fresh jalapenos or a fresh serrano and putting that in your food is actually giving you health benefits in addition to giving you that fun, spicy kick. Um, so I'm big on just like always having a big like veggie bake with whatever thing. And then um, maybe there's brown rice, or I do like getting the, like, veggie pastas. There's all these, like, gluten-free pastas now with, that are made from, like, lentils or made from whatever, and I actually think those are really good, like, veggie pastas. Um, but yeah, so I do eat, bread sometimes, and I like making hamburgers. I like making hamburgers. I feel like I'm not really giving a very good idea of, like, typical day with meals and examples. I will maybe, like, think about that more. Ooh, mozzarella sticks are so good. They're so good. Um, so what did I make last night? Okay, last night we got um it was like a pizza kit, but it just had, like, the ball of dough, had a ball of dough, pile of cheese, some pepperonis, which pepperonis are not healthy. I, normally would recommend like, "Hey, don't eat the pepperonis," but my boyfriend really likes pepperonis, so whatever. But anyhow, so I, like, rolled out that dough, that pizza dough, and then we made strombolis. I don't know why it is so freaking bright on me. I don't even, like, have these lights on that much. I feel like I'm like Casper the Friendly Frickin' Ghost. Just give me, like, 1 second. This is, like, so silly. Okay, that's a bit better. I was just like, "Dang, it was so." Anyway, um, so yeah, stromboli. So then you fricking, like, put the cheese and the pepperonis inside the dough and roll it up, cut a few slits in the top, butter and herbs get brushed over the top, and, like, oh my gosh, it was insane. They were so good. Um, they were so good. They were insane. And then we had a big, balsamic, vinegar, and so on my broccoli bake, put balsamic vinegar, avocado oil, threw a bunch of sugar in there too, because then you get that, like, balsamic glaze kind of effect. So it's like sugar and balsamic vinegar stirred together, and then some, herbs and stuff in there, and put that on the broccoli, and they were actually really, really good. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of, like, eating regular foods and eating pizzas and eating burgers, and I just try to always, pick a healthier, bun that I'm gonna use. Gonna I'd like to get organic beef if I can find it, or grass-fed minimally if you can't, like, because sometimes they just don't have an organic ground beef, but, um and then on your breads and stuff like that, if you can find one that says 100% whole wheat and just try to avoid that enriched flour, okay? Especially if it says like enriched, bleached flour, just switch it out for something with 100% whole wheat flour and you're going to be in such a much better place. Okay, so coming back through here, high density lipoprotein equals good cholesterol. Low density lipoprotein is the bad cholesterol. Jana, what are your thoughts on Ozempic, Monjaro, and comparable drugs? I mean, there's a lot of information coming out now that they are dangerous. My gut feeling on them has always been that they're dangerous. But I think I saw something recently saying that in people who use the drugs, there's like increased levels of stomach paralysis. I'm like, ooh, ooh. Um, so yeah, I mean, just in general, I I'm a skeptic of stuff like that, right? I don't like the idea of using an injectable pharmaceutical to help people lose weight, especially when that injectable pharmaceutical is made for people with diabetes. Um, I don't necessarily know if I'm not going to speak to that specifically because I think that's a very specific condition and everyone has to decide what's actually best for them. But people using these drugs specifically for weight loss, I think is very, very dangerous. And we're only going to learn more and more about the dangers as more and more people continue to take these drugs. And we unfortunately find out the hard way what the actual long term effects will be. John, good to see you. Just Joe Osborne. I don't know what your oh my is about, but thank you. You should teach. I eat a bag of Twizzler nibs, licorice. Twizzlers are good. I choked on hot spicy pizza. I switched to keto buns recently, and those have been a game changer. Keto buns. Man, oh man. What's in the keto buns? Keto buns. Ooh, so yeah, we got smart bun, keto hot dogs, zero carb, keto culture. Cool. What is in you? What is in you? What is in you? Bun base. Modified wheat starch, wheat gluten, inulin or chicory vegetable fiber, oat fiber, wheat protein concentrate, water, yeast, soybean oil. Interesting. Do they taste good? I guess is the question. But isn't that funny, right? Because isn't that like what I always tell you guys? I'm like, the fiber and the protein slow down the blood sugar response. And that is how you can, not spike your blood sugar when you're eating things that are sweet. And that's exactly what they got in here, right? They got chicory vegetable fiber, oat fiber, and wheat protein isolate that they've added to this bread to bring the net carbs down to zero, right? So net carbs equals total carbs minus fiber. Very interesting. Man, if they taste good, there you go. Crazy all the different things that they are coming out with nowadays. I feel like I learn something new every day or discover a new product thing. Oh, I was really thirsty. Excuse me. Mel B, off topic question, but ASMR on Friday night. So yeah, I moved. Because when I did this Saturday night, that was so much fun doing Saturday night with y'all, but it started bumping at like 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. And I was already like so tired by 10 and 11 p.m. I was like, oh, yeah, like I wanted to keep going. But so I thought since it's Friday, I'll do it a little bit later because usually people like go out to dinner or do whatever, or they gotta like make dinner, etc. So yes, so I'm doing the Friday ASMR. Guys, Friday the 13th of October. It's so scary. It's so scary. And look, I got some flowers. I got some flowers for us. They look a little bit wonky right now, but I thought it would be fun to have some like fall flowers for the ASMR. So it's this beautiful rose in there. And then I actually filmed a couple of ASMR videos last night with the 3DO. So I will have a new video coming maybe on Sunday. So instead of my Sunday chat, I will be posting my new video. Anyway. So yes, 10 p.m. spooky Halloween special on Friday. You gotta try to find the ones you like. Some taste kind of weird. Okay. I'm gonna move my horrible blood vessel drawing out of the frame there. It's fucking freaky. Anyways, okay. Let's see. So, okay, cool. Yes. Mel B's like, sweet, I'm a night owl, even better when we're loopy. Yeah, I think, yeah, 10 p.m. just 10 p.m. on a Friday night. It's just this feels a little more right. I don't know. I love this like Halloween emojis. It's so cute. Oh. How is everybody's week going? Oh, Lordy Lulu. Let's see. Lewis Thompson. Please do a video about if you're hungry, starving, fasting, or full. What do you mean, Lewis? Do you mean like how to tell if you're hungry, starving, fasting, or full? Or you mean during those times when we're losing weight? I'm a little confused with what you mean. Oh, that's kind of cute. I'm such a dork. I'm like sitting here like, oh, I'll just put a clippy in my hair because anyway. It finally has stopped being smolderingly hot in Texas, which is kind of nice. Like if you're bored and you end up eating, or you wait till you have physical symptoms to be hungry, that is why it's confusing. I mean, certainly if you're eating when you're not hungry, that's not going to be helpful with weight loss. You only start feeling hungry once your body has, so basically every time you eat, and then the sugar is essentially being escorted around your body by insulin, and the different parts of your body, muscles, cells, organs, etc., will start taking on those glucose molecules from the insulin. And this is how your blood sugar level lowers. So you're only going to start getting the symptoms of hunger when your blood pressure is low enough. I'm sorry, your blood sugar. I don't know why I keep mixing those. So if you're eating and your blood sugar level is still high, then yeah, that is definitely not only going to put you into a dangerously high level of blood sugar, but it's definitely going to contribute to gaining weight. From the perspective of when your body burns fat, that is also something that your, blood sugar level needs to be pretty low. So when you're in a kind of fasted state between meals, as in you're hungry, your body's burning fat. Your body's starting to burn fat. So then it's just finding the happy balance between letting your body get into that, zone of hunger. And then our biggest, period of time between meals when the body is burning fat is like while we sleep, right? So, um, so not eating too soon before you go to bed is a good idea so that your body is not just digesting while you're sleeping. Your body has a few hours to digest, then you go to bed and while you're sleeping, blood sugar level starts to lower and you go into that, ketosis or fat burning zone. So yeah, you lose weight when your blood sugar level is low. And this is one of the reasons why if people are just constantly sipping on sodas or eating candies or even chewing gum, a lot of the gums have sugar in them. And I think the sugarless gums are not healthier for you. But if you're constantly just putting sugar into your bloodstream all throughout the day, your blood sugar is never really going to have a chance to lower down. And this is why the whole concept of intermittent fasting does help you lose weight. Because when you fast between meals and your blood sugar gets low, you do lose weight during those times. You just have to find the happy balance between not doing fasting for so long that your body goes into like panic mode. And I think just in general, you know, we kind of get this feeling like, oh, I'm going to do one meal a day or intermittent fasting or all of this to try to lose weight, where really fasting is kind of traumatic on the body. It kind of sends your body into like, oh my gosh, what's going on mode. So um, rather than doing big, long, crazy fasts, I think you're in a much better situation if you can just focus on, not overeating. So when you're eating a meal, there's a certain point where, your brain takes a little while to catch up with your actual level of fullness. So it's easy to overeat. One of the recommendations that, you know, I have heard, and I guess I do this without thinking about it, but it's like eat, 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 and then at some point, like put my fork down, wait, and then wait to see if I'm actually still hungry, rather than sitting there and like eating the whole plate of food, and then being like, oh, like did I really need to eat all of that? So trying to avoid overeating, trying to let your body go into those periods between meals where your blood sugar gets low and you get hungry. It's a good idea. Um, But doing really long fasts, I think, is just gonna, set people up to gain the weight back once they go back to their regular eating. Um, and most of us just need to focus on like getting through each day with healthy meals, with, um, not trying to do really extreme things like fasting or whatever. Hopefully that answered your question. Gentle ways to build lean muscle. Body work. Body weight exercises. So any exercise where you're using your own body weight as opposed to using, actual weights. So yoga is a great example, right? In plank pose, that's like a full body, every muscle is involved to like hold you up off the floor. But even downward dog, although they call it a resting pose, it is a very active pose and it is definitely engages a lot of muscles. And then once we get into, like, the vinyasa and the warrior poses, like, now these are, like, very, um, effective for building lean muscle because they're just using your own body weight to, um, help create that tension on the muscle. It's also really, really good for your bones when you do weight-bearing exercises, whether with your body weight or just lifting weights, um, but it's really, really good for your bones. It actually causes your bones to become stronger and build more, little bone molecules or whatever. Anyway, um, but yeah, so body weight exercises. I'm a big fan of yoga, but there's tons of different types of, body weight exercises that can be done. Um, another thing to consider, Jules, is just what it takes to build big muscles. People who want a big, bulky muscle, they have to work. They have to work so hard. So, rather than thinking like, oh, what can I do to build lean muscle? You can kind of just know that, like, unless you're going to the gym and purposefully lifting heavy weights and then lifting heavier and heavier, building up the weight that you're using, you're not going to build anything other than lean muscle. In order to build non-lean muscle, right? So in order for people to bulk up, usually they're having to they take tons and tons of extra protein. Um, so and then using the weight, using weights and then building up the weight amount is kind of like what they're doing to get bulky. So unless you're doing those things, you really don't have to worry about getting bulky. Um, because none of your nutrition videos explain how you lose weight, but you only explain when your blood sugar gets high, you gain weight. So yeah, essentially the way that we lose weight is because the blood sugar level becomes low and the body is like, "Hey, I need some energy." Well, when the blood sugar is low and your body wants energy, it goes to what's called ketones, which are like basically stored fat molecules. So when the blood sugar's high, so let's think about when I was talking about how the insulin is like it's like escorting the sugar around to your body. It's like, "Hey brain, you need any sugar? Hey heart, you need any sugar?" You know, "Hey lungs, y'all need any glucose?" So at the point that you've got sugar in the bloodstream and it's getting escorted around by insulin and your heart is like, "No, I'm good." And your liver's like, "No, I'm good." And there's all this extra blood glucose, all this extra blood sugar, and your body can't use it. That is when your body starts storing that sugar as ketones or fat. So, elevated levels of blood sugar, especially for prolonged periods of time, is what causes your body to store that excess sugar as fat. And having your blood sugar low is what triggers your body to go into ketosis and start burning up the fat that you stored previously. Does that does that make more sense? Um, L. Smith, will you ever make a video for people with chronic illness that can only do very gentle exercises? I feel like I'm maybe not the best equipped to make a video like that. But there are so many amazing yoga teachers that have created videos with that, like, specific kind of thing in mind. I definitely wanna make some, like, gentle yoga and beginners yoga and what I like to call lazy yoga, where you're just, like, laying down on the floor the whole time. But there are so many yoga poses you can do just, like, laying on the floor. That's kind of awesome. Um, but I don't know if I would necessarily say, like, specifically for people with chronic illnesses or chronic pain, because I just don't have personal experience with that, where there are so many incredible teachers who actually, like, either have personal experience with that or have taught somebody with it, that I think would be more, better suited to make a video like that. Best ways to reduce acid reflux in terms of diet. So, I think most of us tend to be fairly familiar with kind of like the list of the foods that cause reflux. Um, so rather than going specifically into like, fried foods, junk foods, really sugary foods, um, one of the best remedies for acid reflux that I don't I mean, I've seen, people talk about it, but I feel like I've not seen enough people talk about it for how common it is actually that when you get acid reflux, it's not because your stomach is too acidic. It's because it's not acidic enough. And what tells the little valve to close is that high level of acidity. Because in order for your body to digest the foods you've eaten, the stomach itself is an incredibly acidic environment. If your stomach acid actually came up, I mean, it would like physically burn you. It's so acidic. So when we feel that feeling of reflux, we're not actually feeling like our stomach acid itself, right? There's like other, you know, the acidic, environments in between, right, that we're actually feeling that acid go back up. So then in order to close that little sphincter, you need more acidity in the stomach. So one of the best things that you can take is, something like apple cider vinegar. And actually by adding acidity, even though it sounds cray cray, but by adding acidity to the stomach, by taking like, maybe like a caplet or a capsule, because taking a shot of ACV, like some people like to do that, but it is very, very intense and pungently tasting. So I always recommend like tablets or capsules. When you take an ACV caplet and you increase the acidity, you actually can close that valve. And I have known lots and lots of people for whom taking apple cider vinegar with their meals um, really, really helps with reflux. Again, this is such a common problem. I will probably even do a whole video on it. Um, but yeah, when we think about things that are going to cause reflux or that are going to affect that environment that we want in the stomach to promote healthy digestion. When we think about, processed foods and junk foods, these are often the things that are often the things that affect our digestion in a negative way, to do that. And then sometimes it's specific things like, tomato sauce. So I think each person, you kind of have to like notice what foods are your personal triggers. Um, and then largely just trying to eat things that are more close to their natural state. Uh, I've seen people be like, "Oh, all foods are processed. You can't say not to eat processed foods." Well, I'm specifically talking about highly processed foods. And the way you can tell they're highly processed is that when you look at the back of the ingredients, there's tons and tons of crazy long ingredient names, and they don't look like foods, right? If you look at the ingredients and it's like tomatoes, bell peppers, turmeric, garlic, onion, right? That's a food that's made of real foods. But when you see corn syrup solids, modified cornstarch, modified food starch, yeast extract, even the wheat protein isolate and whey protein isolate, I consider that a highly processed ingredient. And I would rather somebody just have 100% whole wheat bread or something than something with the wheat protein isolate. But these are just kind of examples, right? And if you see an ingredient list with like overwhelmingly lots of long looking confusing chemical names, like that's a highly, highly processed food and it's going to negatively affect your gut, whether it's something acute and noticeable like reflux or kind of a longer problem affecting how the gut functions. That kind of varies person to person. How to distract yourself from eating from boredom. Things to distract yourself from boredom eating. I'll have to think about that. Um, that's why when you said eating fats help you stay full, you don't explain how it makes you lose weight because all it does is stay stable. So eating fats, yes, they help you stay full. They help send messages of satiation or feeling satiated, feeling full, um, to the brain while you're eating. You don't explain how it makes you lose weight because all it does is stay stable. I'm so sorry. I'm a little bit confused, Lewis, by your question. But basically, because eating the fats helps to slow down the spike of the blood sugar. Let's get another visuale in here. And actually, maybe instead of wiping that one clean, I'll just like use a new piece of paper. Doo doo. Have you done more research on sweeteners yet? I'm working on it. I do have a little like script of research that I've started doing, but I've not found anything about stevia and water retention yet. But I feel like maybe it can be there somewhere. So here's when we have a lot of refined sugar, right? The blood sugar level goes up very quickly and it goes up to a high level. When we have something that contains some healthy fats in it, not only does it slow down the duration of the spike and then it falling. See how here it's already fallen back there, but here it's just starting to fall. It also doesn't let the actual blood glucose level go as high. So it slows it down and it keeps the blood sugar low. So this blood sugar spike point up here, this is like fat storage time, right? You have elevated your glucose levels so much. Largely, the reason that it's able to bring the blood sugar level down is because it starts turning that sugar into fat. Um, so this blood sugar spike equals sign fat storage. This blood sugar smooth lift not going up as high. We're not as likely to end up having to store that sugar as fat. Because not only does the sugar have a longer period of time to be escorted throughout the body, and the body's going to have more of a chance to actually use the sugar up because it's not getting tons of sugar banging on your door all at one time. It's dispersed over a longer period of time. But because we're not getting up the sugar level as high, we're not as likely to start storing extra fat. So it's kind of um, dual perspective looking at like when we store fat, when we burn fat, and the conditions under which we do either one. Does that answer your question, Lewis, let me know. So yeah, Chris Alvino just chiming in here on the question about lean muscle. Chris says, yeah, I used to do weightlifting and strongman and eating tons of protein, and I never bulked up that much. LOL. Unless you're doing bodybuilding, it's impossible to bulk up. So yeah, and as women, we a lot of times like we hear this like, oh, I want to build lean muscle. I want to build lean muscle. Um, but yeah, for the most part, the default is that the body builds kind of lean muscle, and it's difficult to get really bulky muscles. I will say, I'm reminded of something that I learned from Banks. I think it was Banks. Do you remember Banks? She did like dance lessons and workouts and stuff. But she was talking about how ballet is really, really excellent for building long, lean muscles. And part of it is because there's so much stretching and lengthening of the muscle as well as building strength or whatever. So I would just maybe throw in here a little lean muscle recommendation. Also could be like ballet, Pilates. Pilates and yoga are really very similar in a lot of ways in terms of like the physical movements themselves. Um, or at least there's lots of, kind of crossover anyhow. So Pilates, ballet, things where we're also focusing on stretching and building flexibility in addition to building strength. And all of those different fitness practitioners and yoga teachers that I worked with over the years all talked about how strength and flexibility are really closely intertwined and really need one another. So, in order to build flexibility, you also need to be working on your strength and your stability. So, uh, as you're, um, similarly, as you're building your flexibility, you want your strength, you want your stability of your joints. And then as you're building strength, you also want to be, stretching the muscles as well and not like just trying to bulk them up. But yeah, long lean muscles from ballet. I remember that was like one of the things that we talked about in one of her videos. Um yeah, apple cider vinegar trick. I definitely recommend it. Like I said, drinking it straight can be kind of intense, but some people are into that. Um, but you can find the, capsules or tablets, pretty much anywhere, and they're pretty cheap. I did come across like, um, stay stable and you're not losing pounds. How do you know if you're spiking your blood sugar too much for weight loss? I don't think there's necessarily you know, an amount, so to speak. um, that's an interesting question. I mean, I would say realistically, you know, our body I think our body really is, kind of prefers, when we have as few spikes of the blood sugar as possible, which means the more that we can get the, like, low and slow fiber, protein, healthy fats, slowed down blood sugar spike and fall, it definitely prefers that. Now, when we eat a meal, unless we're eating something that's just like a huge plate of refined carbohydrates, like a huge plate of white pasta or something. Most meals are going to generally tend to look like this just because there's fiber, fat, and protein in the meal, right? Um, these blood sugar spikes are primarily going to be from things like drinking sodas with, a lot of sugar where you're taking in, you know, a tremendous amount of sugar in a very short period of time. And then because when you drink something, there's no fiber, fats, or protein, it's gonna have the most profound lift of all compared to, you know, even eating a candy bar, especially a Snickers bar, something that has, like, nuts in it. That, presence of the fat helps to lower the glycemic load or the total glycemic index of the food. So drinking sodas is gonna be probably, like, the number one thing that's causing blood sugar spikes. And if you think about somebody who drinks sodas throughout the day, I mean, that could be like, how many sips do you get out of a soda? Let's just say there's 20. So, you know, I don't necessarily know depending on how fast you drink it, right? It's a little difficult to, like, give a, like, firm amounts, so to speak. But if you're sipping on sodas all throughout the day, or you are having them a couple times per day, you can imagine that number of blood sugar spikes starts to be in the, 10, 20 a day. Um, Easily in terms of, like, you had a sip of soda or you drank half the soda and then the body panics, pancreas, releases a bunch of insulin, your body brings the frickin' blood glucose back down, and then you take another sip of soda. So that I think is probably like the biggest, one of the biggest detriments, not only to our health, but also to weight loss. And I think this is why when people give up sodas, almost always they immediately lose weight. And it's because those calories that we drink are like by far the worst blood sugar spike of all. Um, so, so sodas I think would be the worst. You could also think about, like, and every time you, like, walk past the bowl of candy. Now, I remember when there used to be, like, the Halloween bowl of candy, and, like, every time I would walk by, it'd be like, "Meow, meow, meow, meow." And then I finally was just like, "I'm just gonna not eat a single piece." And I did it, and it was great, and then I did it the next year, and then I got fired. But anyway, but yeah, like, resisting constantly snacking on little candies and just constantly taking in sugar is just a good thing to think of, and rather than giving yourself a number, like, I wanna try to have less than, like, 15 blood sugar spikes per day. I wanna have less than 5 blood sugar spikes a day. I feel like that's overthinking it a little bit, but also, like, if that's helpful for you to think of it like that, I would just aim for as few as possible. Um, how is Athena doing? Athena's doing really well. We actually filmed, Friday of last week. She can drive now, which is great. She's getting around pretty good. She's still using a cane to walk, but she said she's feeling like she can put more weight on the leg, more and more weight on the leg. So she's feeling like she's, getting through the healing process. I know she does not consider that she is done with the healing process at all. But she is definitely, just regaining her ability to get around and to live her life. She has started seeing some of her clients again, not taking on a full load of clients that she, used to. And she was really excited to get together and film. And I was like, I don't know, Athena, I feel bad like making you like film while you're like, it seems like she's in some discomfort. And she was like, "No, no, no, I wanna film. I wanna film. Oh my gosh." She's been, like, chomping at the bit to film. So anyways, I almost wanted her to say in the video, like, "Corrina is not making me film. I am making Corrina film." Like, 'cause she loves making videos. It is incredible. She loves making videos for y'all. And um, so yeah, so she's doing well. Thank you for asking, and thanks to all of y'all who have helped support her, and I know she's deeply, deeply grateful for all the support on her GoFundMe page and all of that stuff. Um, so yeah, Athena's getting better, slowly but surely. She's definitely on her way to healing. What happened to the Stupid Easy cooking show? Lewis, when I was working for that company, I did not have very much control over what I was making. Now, within the videos, I had, completely control over like saying pretty much whatever I wanted to, which was nice. But like the videos I was allowed to make were largely dependent on what my boss thought would make money. And he thought that cooking shows, nutrition shows, it costs too much to produce and doesn't have enough return on investment. So that's also why he made me stop doing the live chat. BT dubs, by the way. If any of y'all were like, why did you stop doing the live chat in the first place? It was not my choice. It was not my choice. But yeah, so now that I'm on my own, it's great. I can actually choose and do whatever I want to do. My only limitations are like what I personally can film, what I personally can edit. But I do, you know, I feel like there's also a lot of people out there who've done like making healthy versions of junk foods, and like there's some out there that are really good. So I want to do that, but then I also feel like I don't know if that's necessarily my wheelhouse. Like, I'm not a chef, guys. I'm just a normal ass boring person who cooks all of her food, and a lot of it's boring. Like, sometimes I do really fun stuff, but even when I make fun stuff, like I'm do it in a boring way. I'm not like I'm no Gordon Ramsay. I'm no Gordon Ramsay. But I also feel like maybe I could like team up with a chef. That could be really fun. Anyway. So yeah, unfortunately, Stupid Easy Cooking Show got scrapped, but I had a lot of fun doing it, and I have thought about kind of bringing it back. So we'll see what happens. Tell us how to make a healthy meal. Like, show us how much food we need to physically eat. You just tell us the amount of macros and micros to eat, but don't physically show us how much food physically. I've actually never even given macros and micros. I'm not a counting macros and micros person. By the way, that's macronutrients like protein, fat, and carbs, and micronutrients. So a lot of people are like about like having certain ratios of the macronutrients in their meals, and I just try to have a huge pile of vegetables, um, a moderate amount of protein. They say that the amount of protein that your body can digest at one time is about the size of your fist. Um, Now I think that's obviously is a very general recommendation, but it's a kind of a good thing to think about if you think about like how large sometimes the pieces of meat are when you go in a restaurant. Too much protein is actually really hard on your kidneys. So eating a huge, huge steak or a huge, huge whatever piece of meat, and even, people who chug tons and tons of protein shakes. I think that also should be considered as like, hey, your kidneys can only handle so much protein. Um, so if I was a plate, it's pretty general. So a lot of times my meals, I try to have, a couple of different veggies to have. Although sometimes I will just do like a big broccoli bake and like that's it. So like last night it was broccoli bake and when we made strombolis and like holy heck, those were insane. Um but typically, right, I might have like a cucumber salad. I really like having a cucumber salad. So maybe my veggies, there's like, like this is like some cucumber salad, and then this is like some kind of baked vegetable. So zucchinis, broccolis, carrots, whatever. Um, and then meat is like less than a quarter of the plate. Sometimes it's more than that, but it's a good goal. And then I'd like to have either some source of carbs. Sometimes that might be a vegetable like, cauliflowers or carrots, right? So maybe I'll have like broccoli and carrots or something like that. But maybe I have rice or I have some kind of pasta or something. But the general idea is like lots and lots of vegetables. Let your body consume a lot of vegetables because that's where the nutrients of your meal are. I know that this little picture is not really giving you a general thing. I think it's important to note that, different sized people need different amounts of food. So showing you how much food I physically eat personally doesn't necessarily, you know, that's not necessarily a one size fits all for everyone. But I can potentially do something like that. So Mel B says it happened to me. I gave up dark sodas and lost 10 pounds without trying. So yeah, just the drinking of the sugar, I think is the kind of like the most insidious thing, right? In terms of things that make us gain weight. Because when we eat, a giant, piece of fried food or a giant piece of cake or whatever, like our brain can kind of fathom that, like, oh, yeah, that double hamburger where I had like a lot of fat in it and stuff. But when we're just drinking a soda, the brain doesn't necessarily like realize sugar equals sign fat. Sugar equals sign fat. Um, Possible causes of hair loss. Yeah, stress is certainly a big one. One of the best things we can do for our hair, our scalp stuff in general is just like really like massaging the scalp. We can do it when our hair is dry, but for me, typically like when I'm shampooing and conditioning, because I can't really necessarily get to my scalp super well. Um, but I think, there's actually a great deal of benefit that can come just from like massaging and working the scalp, um, bringing blood flow to it. Maybe you get one of those little scalp. I can't find my scalp massager thing, but those little scalp massage dealy bopper things are only a couple bucks. That's not necessarily going to give you like the blood flow improvement necessarily, but they feel really good. So in terms of like relaxing the muscles and helping draw blood flow, um, that is definitely good. And then I encourage you to just like really like massage the blank out of your scalp when you're washing your hair. Like you're at like you're at the hair salon or something. Um, in terms of other causes of hair loss, I've definitely seen, um, I feel like I've seen, different lists, different things talking about, but I think probably the most common cause is stress. Please do a healthy version of body care at Ulta. You always tell us how to take care of your beauty with foods, not chemicals, but that's expensive and not possible to everyone usually. I do not go to Ulta. I've been to Ulta once or maybe twice years ago. But I'll show y'all what I use. I actually brought this in case anyone asked about skin stuff. Beauty by Earth. This is my fave brand. And I feel like this stuff is, it's kind of expensive. Well, I pretty much only order these things when they're on sale or it's Black Friday or whatever. But just from like slightly seeing the expense of, makeup things that I encounter on the internet, I'm like, holy crap, this is freaking dirt cheap compared to what some people are paying for makeup. So I feel like it's a very interesting topic in general, right? Um, so, this concept of, taking care of beauty with foods and not chemicals, but that's expensive. Um, I think that I think that largely we have been, I don't know, you know, influenced to believe that it costs more to eat healthy. Now, I certainly understand that like organic food costs more than non-organic, obviously. Um, but when we consider, you know, just buying produce, buying vegetables, buying our foods and making our foods compared to buying processed foods that are ready made, ready to eat. That is really where I think that a lot of the like price distortion comes in. Not only because huge food manufacturers have been able to sell things for dirt cheap because they're producing so much of it and because they always choose cheaper ingredients to use, um, cheaper methods to produce the foods. A lot of those convenience foods seem cheap, but then realistically, what you're saving in money, you're only going to end up costing yourself later, either in your health or in how you feel. So I 100% believe it when I say that when you spend your money on healthier food, you're making an investment in yourself and in your future, not only feeling better and having more energy and I think looking better. I think that eating healthy helps your skin as well. Um, a lot of the expense can be avoided if we're cooking foods for ourselves. So just buying things like a bag of rice and a bunch of produce and veggies and some meat is really not that expensive. And especially when we start comparing that with some of the beauty products that people are buying, it's definitely not even comparable. Um, so I can't really do a body care thing at Ulta. I could look online and see if they have anything I would even purchase. But largely, Ulta is just not where I do my beauty routine, my beauty purchasing. Um, so yeah, my beauty care stuff, I order it online from these companies. There's Beauty by Earth. And then this one called 100% Pure. So my makeup and stuff is 100% pure, and then a lot of the skincare stuff I get is this Beauty by Earth brand that I like a lot. Um, but yeah, I definitely will maybe like do a, skincare, beauty care thing. I really don't take care of my skin like I should. I really don't like do very much, but maybe in a weird way, that's what helps it look good is not putting a bunch of crap on it. But anyways, guys, y'all, I am going to go ahead and call it a day here, but I have had so much fun with y'all and really, really good questions that came into the chat today. So thank y'all for being here. Thank you for your awesome questions. And yeah, so 10 p.m. Friday the 13th, should have had some little something I could hold up for y'all. But I will look forward to seeing y'all there. I'm gonna troubleshoot right now with the 3DO to try to make sure I can get the 3DO working for y'all. Um, I will leave this up, I guess. Um, I I don't know which question you missed, but, I feel like, there's a lot of really, really good little, interesting questions in here, and then I just go off on frickin' crazy tangent land. But, um but I wanna thank y'all for being here, and I love, love, love seeing you guys, and, yes, I'm gonna do a little practice with the 3DO. Um, yeah, I may even, go live for a second, who knows? That's a good idea, do a little, practice teaser. I did that once, and then, I felt so embarrassed I deleted it. Um, but yeah, I have to get a little different setup going on to set up for ASMR, but I may go ahead and do a little test thing. And if I do, then hopefully see you guys there. All right, L. Smith, Mel B, Jules, Lewis, Chris, all of you guys, thank you for being here. I love y'all. I appreciate you so much. And I look forward to seeing y'all very, very soon.